It may seem trivial to some, but to those who understand, this is one of the most satisfying feelings in the world. Taking your book, something you've poured years of your life and oftentimes thousands of dollars of your own money into, and placing it on the shelf next to other completed works, and knowing that your story has been told. Whether it sells 100 copies or a few million, your story is now out there for this and future generations to enjoy. Writing a book, it's a dream for so many people, but in the end, many often give up because it seems too big or too daunting. In today's video, we're going to break down some of these roadblocks so that you can either begin or finish up that book you've always wanted to write. Let's get started. Hey friends, I'm Slavonik. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we're going to talk about how to write a book. Speaking of books, I finally picked up The Art of Racing in the Rain. I've been meaning to read this book for a while. I've actually purposely not read this book until I published Legacy Drive. I didn't want to have any influence from this book. I don't know, I haven't read it yet. So looking forward to reading it. It's really a book that needs no introduction, just got turned into a major movie and everything. So props to Garth Stein for putting out a great book, and I hope the movie was good. Haven't seen it yet. Maybe once this is done, I'll check that out too. So writing a book, right? So you have this idea. You thought it up, polished it out, taken a few notes. Great, that's awesome. You've managed to do what many people set out to do, but never do. That is a lot of doo-doo. Now what? Where do you go from here? Before you begin, ask yourself this. Are you passionate about this idea? Do you find yourself thinking about it when you should be doing other things? Will you catch yourself picturing this story as a movie? Can you see yourself developing this story over the next several months or maybe even several years? If you said yes, let's roll. If not, hey, start anyway, right? You'll be surprised at how much passion you'll develop for your story as your story continues to develop. So before we begin, I want to give you a few pointers. I made the mistake of writing Legacy Drive with no notes at all. I wrote it from beginning to end, cover to cover, all from my mind. It was all in my imagination, and I wrote it as if I was watching a movie. It sounds poetic in some sense, but it's actually quite stupid because I had no roadmap, no guide to keep me on track. I would get writer's block constantly for months at a time. I would set it aside, I'd be completely stuck, not sure where to go. All of a sudden I'd get a flash of inspiration, I'd be back writing again, and then writer's block again, rinse and repeat for 6 years. So word of advice, don't do that. Which leads us to step 1, and that is an outline. The outline is the basic foundation of your book. It serves as a blueprint for where you want to go. It also allows you to map out the critical beginning, middle, and end. Actually, I should be going this way. Yeah. There's no specific formula for writing out an outline. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really just putting down your ideas in some sort of organizational pattern. What I do is I write down my chapters or topics, if they're not really chapters as of yet, and in a Word document. Give yourself lots of leeway with this because a lot's probably going to be changing over the course of your story. Break it up into sections, but most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes with it because, like I said, a lot's going to change. Like dots on a map that serve as cities you plan to stop in on a road trip, your outline is for you alone to help you plot the course of your story. You very well may have your entire story plotted out whenever you finish your outline. At that point, the only thing left to do is, well, all the work. So do make an outline. Don't write from imagination. That's your don't. Do make an outline. Don't be stupid. Step 2, get comfortable. It's so important to be comfortable while you're writing. I personally find myself on the couch with my feet up on my laptop typing. That's my writing position. I rarely ever write at a desk. It's just not comfortable for me. On the other hand, I know someone who still enjoys writing with pen and paper. He writes everything by hand and then goes back and types it up later. That's what works for him. Try different things, go to different locations, and if need be, get out of the house. Go to that special spot in the woods, go to a park, go to the beach, or go to a coffee house. Just make sure that you're comfortable. For me, I can't write when I hear people talking in the background. It just screws with my head, and it's like, because the way I write, I'm kind of typing as I'm hearing things, if that makes sense. I'm not hearing voices, but just the characters in my head. You know what I'm talking about. Another thing worth trying is try listening to different music. What I do is I like to match up music that kind of fits the scene that I'm working on. I'll listen to it before I start writing and kind of build the scene up in my head with where I want to go with it. A great source for cinematic music, if you wanted to check that out, are the groups Two Steps from Hell, Audio Machine, and High Finesse. Those are really good. Those are my go-tos whenever I need something like cinematic to match action scenes or even some of the dramatic scenes and whatnot. It really kind of helps steer your mind in the direction that it needs to go. Once I can visualize where the scene is going, I turn the music off and then I start to write. That's how it works for me. The important thing too is to put all the stereotypes aside. Just find what works for you and then do your thing. That's it. Step 3. Set goals. Stephen King, of course you all know who Stephen King is. He writes like 1 million books a day. Okay, not that many. That's pretty ridiculous. Stephen King once said that he sets a goal to write 6 pages a day, 6 complete pages per day. He said that he often finds that once he gets to that 6-page mark, he's so inspired that he ends up just continuing on. That's how he's able to write so many books. Well, that he's kind of a madman too. That may be a bit much for some. 6 pages, that's a lot of work. Maybe start off with a page, maybe 2 paragraphs. The point is, have a goal that's obtainable for you. Don't set a goal that's so high that you end up getting discouraged if you can't meet it. Getting discouraged, that's not how this is supposed to work. At the same time, it's important to keep working. Regardless if you plan to do this as a career or if you simply have one story you want to tell, no one's going to write that story for you, and it certainly won't write itself. You've got to be willing to put the work in. Setting goals will help you stay on track. Don't beat yourself up if you don't meet these goals, but at the same time, don't cast these goals aside. They're there for a reason. Be committed to your story, because I promise it'll be worth it in the end. Step 4. Write like no one is watching, because if you're on your first draft, no one's watching. Don't be a grammar Nazi. Don't worry about how many sentences you need to have in a paragraph. Let your editor sort all that out. That's what they're there for. Yes, you need to hire an editor. At this point, just write. That's it. An old friend of mine who got me into motorsport writing, David Phillips, once told me that this is often referred to as mind melt. Just kind of letting your ideas drip down on the paper if you want to visualize that sort of thing. That's pretty disgusting. Mind melt. Ugh. You may find that it's a lot easier just to get all your content down at one particular point and then go back and give it some shape later. That's actually what works for me. I'll kind of mind melt all my ideas down in some sort of story-like structure, but then I'll go back later and then kind of refine it from there. That's how I work. Even though you're most likely typing your story, consider everything that you're putting down at this point to be in pencil. I need a break. Let me tell you about a few good tools worth checking out. Number 1 is ReadZ, ReadZ.com. ReadZ is an amazing web-based tool that you can use. You can write your book on ReadZ, then send it to an editor, then send it to a cover designer. You can basically have your entire book done on this one site and then just export the PDF and you're good to go. The good thing about ReadZ is, number 1, it's free. It doesn't cost anything to sign up. I actually wrote Legacy Drive on ReadZ. What makes it so good too is because it's web-based, you can reach it and interact with it from all kinds of different devices and whatnot. The problem I had early on is I was writing everything on a Word document. I didn't have it saved on a cloud or anything like that, so it was all on my home desktop. So I'd be at work and I have a great idea, and I have to wait till I come home and start messing with it or make some notes or whatever and hope I don't lose them along the way. With ReadZ, you can just log in, jot down your notes or whatever. I do a lot of things with my fingers. I'm sorry about that. Jot down your notes and then go back later and refine it into some structure. It really is kind of a one-stop shop in a sense for writing books. Another website to check out is Wattpad.com. Wattpad is great because it's also free to sign up and you can publish your work directly from Wattpad. It has some paid content on there where you have to pay to read certain books. A vast majority of the books that are on Wattpad are free books. You can just write it, release it 1 chapter at a time, which is kind of a cool way to build a following as well. If you're ever doing any type of fan fiction for science fiction type things, you can go on fanfiction.com or I think maybe .net. Another thing I struggled with, and a lot of people struggle with this, it's a very common thing, is writer's block. Some people debate whether writer's block is true, whether it's something that's real or not, and it's just all in our heads. Who cares? You get it sometimes, it happens. A good tool that I use for combating writer's block is actually a game. It's a game on Steam, which is kind of an online game store application you can download. And it's this game called Elegy for a Dead World. It's basically kind of what's referred to as a side-scrolling game where you go through different scenes and you actually have to write out where you are and what's going on and everything. And it really just, I don't know what it is, it kind of just helps break up your mind with the monotony of what's happening in your story and think of something else, take it in a different direction. And it's kind of like a little massage for your head. So now that you have the tools, the rest is up to you. Like I said before, just write. It may seem strange at first, but I promise that with time, you'll find your flow. If you're fortunate enough to get to the end, and I say that because not everyone does, if you're fortunate enough to get to the end, boom, you get to see your book on the shelf. It is literally, like I said before, one of the best feelings in the world of taking your finished book and putting it on the shelf. And then when you start getting pictures of your book from readers, either whether it's family or friends or whatever, or just random readers, it's such a cool feeling knowing that the story that you told is now in the hands of other people and they're reading. It can be pretty frightening too, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's such a crazy feeling knowing that you could potentially have a direct impact on someone's life based on the story that you just told. It's ugh. If you decide to post on Amazon, when you start getting your first reviews, it can be a little daunting at times. I had a friend tell me one time that once you publish your book, the easy part is done. She was right. So now I bid you to go forth and share your story. If you guys have questions, leave them in the comments below. I'd make an effort to respond to every single comment. So long as it's coherent, I will respond to you. Well guys, that's it from me. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time. Peace!